Hello, good morning. This is my second live stream from my desk. I hope this one goes a little bit better than the first one. The audio on the first one. I can hear myself echoing, so now I know that the audio works. The audio uh, was a little delayed on the first live stream attempt last week. So I think we've made a few improvements. I hope everyone on the East Coast of the United States is prepared for this winter storm that's coming. And I just wanted to chat from the desk about what you can do during a winter storm. If you're a hobbyist, hey, that's awesome because it forces you to sit at your desk, go through your library, do some organizing, get to that cataloging, get to the, all those documents that you've been meaning to read through and annotate and extract and abstract winter storms and bad weather. It's great. If your hobby, however, is being outside, well, there's still some things you can do during bad weather to make your next adventure outside a little more productive. So we'll talk about a little bit of that. I'm Sandy. Um, I'm still getting over a little bit of a cold. We're on the East Coast of the United States, the Mid Atlantic, between Baltimore and Washington, D.C., and a winter ice and snowstorm is heading our way. Probably later tonight, but today temperatures are in the single digits, which is really rare for this area. So going outside and doing a live stream like I normally do on a Saturday is really not a good idea. It's not a good idea for my for my fingers and my skin. It's not a great idea for my phone and my other equipment, my camera. So not today. Although it's really sad because it is a beautiful sunny morning despite the single digit temperatures out there. So it's really hard to stay indoors, but there's plenty that we can do. And so if you are a historian or genealogist, welcome. I'm so glad you found my channel. If you're not, welcome. We can still chat and we can still talk about things that you can do to preserve your personal history, your family history, especially on a snowy day. Let's see if this works. Yes, okay, I've taken away the background and I'm gonna do this. Nope, I'm gonna do this. Okay, that worked. So we'll explore a few things you can do in the analog world. Let's say if your power goes out, we'll explore some websites that are really awesome rabbit holes that you could get lost in from your desk or from from your couch. All good things to use time when we can't get outside. One thing to do, if bad weather's heading your way, it's a quick opportunity to download files. So we'll talk about some places to go to download some interesting files if you can download and print and, do the old-fashioned way in the event that you lose power. We'll also talk about some easy things we can do to preserve our personal history, all those little to-do list items that we can't seem to get to. All right. So the first thing I want to talk about, good morning, everyone, is to pick up on what we talked about last time, photos, and making sure we preserve our photos for future generations by writing on the back of those photos where they were taken, who's in the photo. That's really easy. Grab that box of photos, grab a pen that's going to be permanent or a pencil. Some prefer pencil, and start writing. Now, there are those who think you shouldn't write on even on the backs of an original photo. I am not one of those people. I believe in writing on the backs of original photos. However, the best thing you can do to preserve old photos is to make a copy of that photo. Especially if it's a really old photo, don't display the original. Even if you have a picture frame that says it's UV protecting glass so that light doesn't damage it, there's always the chance that condensation can happen in picture frames. And you may have discovered a picture frame, an old picture in your family, and when you try to take the photo out of the frame, you realize that the entire image is stuck to the glass in the frame, and that's because over time, condensation due to temperature changes has impacted that photo. So when you find that awesome old family photo, make a copy of it. Scan it, digitize it, make a copy, display the copy, put away the original. That is the best way to preserve old photos is to put them away, but put them away after you've identified the folks and the places in the photo. While you're doing that, you need to connect with other people in your family to ask them questions. What a better activity if your whole family is snowed in, even if you lose power, you can still pick up the phone or, heaven forbid, talk in person to your family members. Ask them those questions, especially your older family members. I think all of us regret at some point not having asked certain questions of our grandparents, and if you were fortunate enough to know your great grandparents. I was fortunate enough to be alive for my grandparents and a few great grandparents to be alive during my lifetime. And even though I did ask them a lot of questions because I was always a curious kid, I didn't ask enough questions. I certainly did not ask enough questions, and I really wish I had asked more. Document those stories. There's a good way to document those stories. Write a letter. On a snowy day, on a rainy day, on a bad weather day, or a day that you just want to be at home, grab a pen and a piece of paper and write a letter. Yes, this actually happened in the old days. People sat down and wrote letters. And on my other channel, the Primary Sources channel, I have recommendations for topics for letters. If you can't think about what to write, there there's so much to write about. Write a letter about your favorite movies and books as a kid. Write a letter about um, all of the places that you've been and all the places you want to go. Write a letter about what you know about your family's history. And then send that letter, not electronically, send a real letter in a real envelope with a real stamp. It'll be novel these days. One really cool thing about letters, writing actual letters, not email letters, is the ability to be really creative. And for me, that is using fountain pens. And the fountain pen hobby is really an addiction because you find a pen that you love and you find an ink that you love. But then you realize there are millions of colors of ink. So then you need another color. So you buy another color, but you don't want to empty out your current pen. So you buy another pen and then you find another ink and then you buy another pen. That's how the cycle goes. It can become expensive. It doesn't have to be an expensive hobby. Ink lasts a long time and you can buy them in really small quantities. I prefer smaller quantities with a larger variety of colors. And then when I find the colors that I absolutely love, then I buy the big bottle. So this is the one last year. I kind of did a ranking of the top 10 inks that I discovered in 2024. Okay, so going back almost 2 years now. The top 10 inks I discovered in 2024, this was my number one. And this is Bonsai by Birmingham Pen Company. It is just a greeny green, a very earthy green. I keep a pen journal and an ink. I'm sorry, I keep a pen and an ink journal. This is the ink journal. And I do a little exploring. I, um, use the ink on different kinds of paper, cotton paper, bright white copy paper, and you can see how the ink show up differently on different kinds of paper. And then I'll put the ink in my south facing window on a swatch for 4 weeks. Um, okay, by my crazy math, that equates to 400 years of regular daily UV exposure, right? By putting it in this south facing window that gets sun all day long. You wouldn't get that if you wrote in a journal or had a letter sitting on a desk. So a really extreme UV test. And then a chromatography strip there at the bottom. For me, that's just kind of fun to really explore inks. But the point is, I can use a cool ink, a fun fountain pen, and some great paper to write a letter. Do that on snowy, snowy days. So that one's bonsai. This one is tanzanite sky. Absolutely beautiful. There are hundreds, thousands, maybe millions of different colors of inks. So today, on a snowy, yucky day, this would be a good day for me to update my ink journal, update my fountain pen journal. Let's talk for a minute about some resources you can download and then explore later. Hey, Kay Collie, nice to see you. Oh my gosh, the fountain pen hobby is just it's a rabbit hole. But I wish more people would write letters. Um, I need to do it myself, you know. But you know, writing letters is so awesome because future generations, they'll get the letter, so they'll hear what you had to say and what you wanted to describe. They'll also get your handwriting. They'll also get your signature. If they're lucky, they'll still have the envelope, so they'll get a stamp. And I'll do a whole video on old stamps and how you can still use old stamps today, and you can still find them relatively cheaply. You can get stamps from the 1950s and 60s in small denominations really cheaply. And how cool to use an old stamp on a new letter. Or maybe you're sending a birthday card, and if someone was born in 78, and you have a stamp from 1978 or a series of stamps because postage costs more, you would put several. What a great idea that would be. So I want to talk about a few places you can check out online where you can download some really cool files to look at later. And you can use these ideas to plan your next trip outdoors. So this is a presentation that I've done previously. Um, I I do instruction on genealogy, family history, particularly around technology, but I've done a lot of different presentations on different ways to find information about our family and about historic people, places, and events, particularly in the Mid-Atlantic area. And so I want to talk just for a minute about monuments, memorials, and national parks in the state of Maryland. That's where I live. When I do my walking tours, I am either in Washington, D.C., or a historic or small town somewhere, a historic place or small town somewhere in Maryland, maybe Philadelphia, Virginia, the areas close to where I live. Okay, colleague, you do. You send notes on personal stationery with colorful pens. I'm so glad you do. I wish more people did, because we text. We text. So we're so lazy, about sending little notes. That's awesome. And stationery, that's another rabbit hole. Oh my gosh. That's something you can really get addicted to. Right, let's see if I can do this. Yay, this worked. Okay, it works a little bit. When I've downloaded PowerPoints into StreamYard, sometimes it changes the slide. And this one it changed a little bit. But the resources here, the monuments, memorials, and national parks, this is all part of our National Park Service. National Park Service, the idea of national parks really started to kind of come into vogue with the presidency of Ulysses S. Grant when he designated Yellowstone as our nation's first national park. And then the National Park Service kind of grew up around it, and Teddy Roosevelt really um, did an amazing job of investing in our national parks. And then we have those as what is called America's best idea. It absolutely is. It is our best idea, and our national parks are our greatest resource and treasure. They are also sources of great information if you're doing historical or genealogical research. And so this little quote is from Stephen Mather, the first director of the National Park Service. There's a great documentary by Ken Burns on the national parks, and it's a multi-episode series. It's fantastic. I highly, highly recommend it. But Stephen Mather said the parks do not belong to one state or to one section. Yosemite, Yellowstone, and the Grand Canyon are national properties in which every citizen has a vested interest. They belong as much to the man of Massachusetts or Michigan or Florida as they do to the people of California, of Wyoming, and of Arizona. So our national parks, they belong to all of us, and I'm so glad they do. National parks are a fantastic place to explore our entire country, from the East Coast and historic places like Independence Hall in Philadelphia and all the monuments and memorials in Washington, D.C. And next to it is New Mexico. I think that's New Mexico. Behind it, the Grand Tetons, Antietam, Gettysburg, Yellowstone, Yosemite, so many places across our entire country. Um, and the website of the National Park Service is a super um, resource for information and particularly history as well. The National Park Service is our national historian, really and truly. You've got the Library of Congress, which um, kind of keeps our literature, writing, documents, photos, films, songs, music. And then the National Archives keeps all of our government related records. But the National Park Service really tells our national story through places. So combined, all three of those really important resources for research. This is a slide that just shows, on a nice sunny day when you can get out. Actually, it's a foggy morning. The large photo with the people in it, that is at Antietam, which for those outside of the United States or maybe who haven't studied their Civil War history, the Battle of Antietam on September 17th of 1862 is still today the bloodiest day in American history. 23,000 soldiers were killed, wounded, or missing in action as a result of that battle, and many, many, many more died after. Um, but this is a picture of the anniversary of the battle. This was the 160th anniversary, so 2022. And every year on the anniversary, National Park Service rangers interpret the history, guide tours. There are lots of activities there. It's important to get to those sites, especially for me because I have an ancestor who fought in the war, and I know exactly where he was because he was in an artillery unit. We have records and maps that show where the artillery unit was, and because his unit records show which gun he was on, I pretty much know exactly where he was. He was in the West Woods. So visiting, listening to the interpreted history from our National Park Service rangers, meeting other people who also had ancestors that day. And then I walked, the picture on the bottom right is a picture of the exact location where his unit was. And so I know exactly where he was. I can stand there. I can see kind of from the vista where he saw. And then at the top, that sketch was during the Civil War, the magazine Harper's Bazaar published articles, obviously everywhere published articles about the Civil War, but Harper's Bazaar published sketches from different sketch artists. And this particular sketch is of that exact location as well, Vanneman's Maryland Battery of the 6th Corps. And so combined, all of that information combined helps me to tell a great story about my ancestor. And this will be a lifelong pursuit for me. I've been researching him for about 10 years. And it's actually how this channel started. I am walking every single place he walked during his 4 years in the Civil War. So, walking, driving, climbing, hiking, during every movement of his unit during the Civil War, and then I started making videos, and I think I've published 18 videos on different portions of where the 6th Corps moved, his particular unit. I have about 200 more to go. I've mapped it all out, but the resources from the National Park Service have been absolutely critical to that research. And our National Park Service rangers, they are absolutely critical to our research. Besides National Park Service rangers, locally at your local historical society, visitors bureaus, that's where you find the people. They are so interested in their history. They are so interested in their communities. And because they know the story. If they don't know the answer, they can point you to someone who does know the answer. So use the national parks as a resource for your research. Now, online, the National Park Service has records, maps, stories, other documents, lots of resources for your research. And I'm showing here within the National Park Service website, the Soldiers and Sailors database. And you can search on your ancestors or other individuals you're researching and get that basic information about them that will help you do more research. Hey, Space Nut, I'm so glad to see you this morning. Did you hear the story of the guy who trekked through the Area 51 in the 90s to follow the 49ers trail? Absolutely. Oh my gosh, I haven't heard that story, but when you I'm a completist. When you start on those kinds of journeys, you don't want to stop and you don't want to let anything get in your way, right? If you want to follow the exact path or explore the exact path, you're going to do it. No, I'll have to look that up, Space Nut. That sounds like a great story. Here I've looked up Alfred Cooper, who served in the United States Civil War. He was a friend of my ancestor, and I'll go on a little tangent here. When you're researching your ancestors, it is so important to research what we call the fan club, friends, associates, and neighbors. Don't just research your person. Research the people who lived next door, the people who lived across the street. And in this case, by researching Alfred Cooper, who was a friend of my ancestor and who also served in the Civil War, but in a different unit, when I went and got his pension file, I saw that he had written about my ancestor in his pension file because my ancestor provided and my ancestor provided a witness document um, concerning the injury that Alfred Cooper had sustained in order to support his claim for a disability pension. So you never know what you find. So here, to start out, when you're doing military research, in addition to the name, because even uncommon names are common, you really need to know the unit. You need to know the state that the unit came from, and you need to know the unit that the individual served in. That'll really help in pulling up records. And so Alfred Cooper, he served in the 5th Regiment of the New York Heavy Artillery, which is different than my ancestor who served in the Light Artillery from Maryland in Snow's Battery. So totally different organizations. Alfred was in Company D. My ancestor was in Battery B. He entered as a drummer and exited as a pilot. And where it says alternate name, that's not his alternate name. That's the alternate name of the record. So now we've got the record name for Alfred Cooper, and we can do other research. All of this is on the website of the National Park Service. And I think people overlook the National Park Service as a source for research. Hey, Space Nut, I'm still learning on StreamYard here. And what I'm trying to do is to show the chat. I can't show the chat. Now when I'm streaming with there it is. Now I can see the chat. Okay. When I'm streaming with Stasis later today, I can because he knows what he's doing. I can see the chat. Now I'm setting up my StreamYard just different. So yeah, so Space Note says he was trying to find the lost markings Jerry Freeman made. 7-day, 100-mile trek through the rest site oh my gosh, in search of the seventh marker. What a cool story. I don't think there were any of my ancestors over there for the Civil War, but some notable battles here in England. Drummer to private sounds like it should be a movie. Actually, in the, the 4 years of the Civil War, there were a lot of field promotions, and you could rise up the rank. My ancestor entered as a private and exited as a corporal, so he was promoted as well. My ancestor was old for the Civil War. He was 32. That was practically ancient for the Civil War. There are these nice handy dandy little tables that will assist you in figuring out, like, if your ancestor was born during these years, then they likely served in these wars, and they're really handy. I often encounter people who say, "Yes, my ancestor served in the Civil War. My ancestor served in World War One." And when you look at the dates, it's like they were 10. No, probably not. Even though there are stories out there, right? Not in World War One. There's a little bit of common sense to be applied. But this Civil War soldiers and sailors database is a great start to then look into other sources of information. Kevin, it is great to see you. We're indoors today. It's actually bright and sunny right this minute, but it's 10 degrees. And so I couldn't stream outside today. I'm not going to risk my camera or my skin. And I'm still recovering from whatever cold I had. Another fantastic resource, of course, maintained by our National Park Service is our war memorials. And this slide is just a few examples. The first one on the top left there is the Korean War Memorial, which I absolutely adore. It is such a unique memorial. It is the soldiers, walking, and they're in the jungle and in weather. And actually, on a day like tomorrow, when we're going to have this winter storm, if you're ever in Washington, D.C. on a rainy, snowy day, visit the Korean War Memorial because it's absolutely breathtaking. Because with the weather coming in and the way they're clothed in the sculptures, you can almost feel them moving. It is such a well-conceived memorial. The one next to it on the top row, that's the memorial to women at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. So the Vietnam Veterans Memorial has three components. It has the wall, which you see at the bottom center. It has the Women's Memorial, and then the Vietnam Veteran Memorial is the three soldiers. Next to that one, on top, is part of the World War One Memorial, which has so many components. But what I'm showing here is the wall with the quote from General Pershing. And behind that, you can see the statue of General Pershing with his field glasses in his hand, his binoculars. Kevin's profile picture is the Illinois battle flag from the Civil War, 15th Illinois Cavalry. Oh, that's fantastic, Kevin. Oh, I have a whole story about my ancestors' battle flag. We know where it is. It's in an archive. I've been in touch with the Maryland archives. We were about to be allowed to go view it and photograph it, and then COVID happened. And then the archive rehoused some of their inventory and put it in a whole different location. So I have to go back and rearrange that trip so that I can get permission to go see and photograph one of the actual battle flags. Your winter storm is going to start at about 11:30 today. 11:30 during the morning, Kevin? Ours is scheduled to start tonight. So it's really going to be an all day tomorrow thing. Space Nut will hopefully be visiting the Apollo 2 Memorial in a few weeks and the Apollo 1 Memorial. Wow, that's awesome. Oh, so Kevin, so yeah, so you're way ahead of us. So you're to the west. It's coming this way. It's heading east. Well, all the best to you. Now, the picture on the bottom left is the memorial to the African American soldiers in the Civil War. It's located in Washington, D.C. on 14th, I think it's on 14th Street. I think it's on 14th Street. Don't quote me on that. It's really near, it's at or near the intersection of 14th Street and U Street in the U Street, Cardoza, Shaw area. The Shaw area named after Robert Shaw. Anyone? Does that name sound familiar to anyone? Think about the movie Glory. Robert Gould Shaw, played by Matthew Broderick. Yay, Kevin. Yep, Glory. You got that. But this memorial in Washington, D.C. is to all African Americans who served in all battles of the Civil War, not just the Massachusetts Regiment. And then the bottom right photo is the World War II memorial. So visiting monuments and memorials can help to connect us to our ancestors in the past. Some have names on walls, like at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. Here in Maryland, our World War II memorial is located on Maryland Route 2, just across from the United States Naval Academy in Annapolis. It's just over the Naval Academy Bridge. It has names on the wall as well. But even the memorials that don't have the names of your ancestor, you can find history. At the World War I Memorial, there are beautiful maps and bronze reliefs. It's just a great way to connect. Also, if you're lucky, you'll also find other history nerds like me and Kevin and Space Nut. You'll find other history nerds at those locations, and you'll be able to connect and talk to them as well. One other, I keep saying one more, one more amazing set of records and resources from the National Park Service. The National Park Service has done a great job documenting the migration routes across America. So talking about going through Area 51 in order to, to walk in the footsteps of some of the 49ers. This is just one example of a map that the National Park Service has, and all of the locations along the routes that can help understand what our ancestors saw and experienced heading west. Now, most of my ancestors landed in Baltimore and stayed here. Literally, I can, as a kid, I could walk across the street. All my neighbors were all my relatives. One of my ancestors went west. He was a loner. He was an explorer, and he made it all the way to San Francisco and all the way back during the 1800s. Along the way, he picked up rocks. The rocks he picked up became an amazing record of geology for the United States. And his collection was displayed at the 1904 World's Fair. So pretty cool. But if you have, if you're an American, if your ancestors came here from Europe, they most likely landed at Baltimore, New York, Philadelphia, maybe New Orleans, the main ports of entry. Then they made their way very slowly and deliberately across the country. So if you live in the West, most likely your ancestors started on the East and made this adventure one or one similar. Along the route, if you trace their footsteps, each of these little markers on this map, and you can, of course, zoom in on this map. It's on the National Park Service website. You can see locations along the way that have been preserved and interpreted. You'll find rangers there, so you can ask about it. And then there are places, kind of the big ones that I've listed there on the bottom left. Plymouth Rock, Ellis Island, the Lewis and Clark Trail, Santa Fe Trail, Angel Island, the Gateway Arch. In New York, the Lower East Side Tenement Museum is amazing. And then the Homestead National Monument. These are just a few of all of the resources to help you trace your ancestors' immigration route across the United States. If I ever get to Branson, check out the World War II museum there. It's pretty good. I will. It is on my. I have so many lists of places to go and things to do. So, Kevin, I definitely have that one on my list. What is the benefit of historic preservation and all of our care to not disturb this, not touch it, don't build here? It's because we can see what our ancestors saw. We can see unchanged landscapes as well as restored landscapes. Battlefields are a great example of restored landscapes. The work of the National Park Service, the American Battlefield Trust, which is amazing. They work to restore battlefields to their historic accuracy, removing structures that did not exist during the time, changing the actual, the horticulture of the area, right? Getting rid of invasive species or non-native species at the time, replanting trees that would have been there during the battle. Restoration is amazing. Preservation is better. If we can preserve what already exists and keep it unchanged, that's the best. But when we can't, it's really important to restore back to that historical, um, to the way it was in history. This is my view of the Painted Desert. About 5 years ago, my daughter and I trekked Route 66. Not related to any ancestor. None of our ancestors was here, but we wanted to see it. So our descendants will know where we were. We created a book. We created our own photo book of our adventure. And now we have that for, you know, future generations to look at. But I can stand here in the Painted Desert and see what Native Americans saw hundreds of years ago because our nation, because Ulysses S. Grant, Teddy Roosevelt, and others who were big fans of the national parks made sure that this was preserved. Now, another important thing to look at is where did your ancestors travel for fun? Maybe it wasn't the migration route. Maybe they had a vacation. Maybe they hung out. And maybe you can go to the same places where they were. The picture on the left is my great grandfather in 1953 in Shenandoah National Park at a sign that says Little Devil Stairs Overlook. And we always thought that was funny because he was quite mischievous. So Little Devil Stairs Overlook was kind of cool. So over 60 years later, my brother, who has given me permission to use his photo in these in the courses I teach, my brother reenacted my great grandfather's pose there. The sign's different. It's been replaced, but it's still Little Devil Stairs Overlook. They're at the same place. They're at the same sign. I think those are cool things to do, and they're great activities for your family. It's a great way to connect generations. Yes, Kevin, a lot of people don't realize that there were battles fought in the Midwest, battles fought, even some of the battles fought in the South are not as, I wanna say popular. I hate to think about popular. Not as well known as the big ones, right? The big 4, Gettysburg, Manassas/Bull Run, Antietam, Fredericksburg, and we can keep going, and it's great that we know them, you and I, and maybe some folks watching, this video. I worry, though, that future generations will have no idea when someone says, "Yeah, like at Gettysburg," or like at Antietam, or like Bull Run, Manassas, which is the like, will that resonate at all with future generations? Because history education has continued to erode in our schools, and in some cases for good good, for well-meaning reason. The thrust of science, technology, engineering, and math over the last 20 years has made little room for history and little room for English and literature and other things. And it's funny because, we constantly hear that the workforce is not ready, the workforce is not ready. Well, it's not technology. they're missing the ability to speak clearly and make complete sentences. And that's the result of eliminating the more, classical education. Speaking of history, the National Park Service has great resources for cultural history across the United States. And so when I showed my picture of the Painted Desert, lots of Native American culture in the American Southwest and really across the entire United States. Sadly, Native American culture around the big cities on the East Coast has been pretty much completely wiped out because of migration, um, industrialization, all the construction and building would have wiped out what would have been historic sites. There are some places along the way, but the American Southwest is where you can really see Native American culture for the tribes and peoples that were in that area. And I'm also really cautious to make sure I don't lump every Native American into one big kettle of Native Americans. There are different tribes all across the United States that had completely different cultures, and the National Park Service is a great resource for learning about those. The National Park Service has an amazing gallery of historic photos that you can access and you can use. And so when you access the gallery on the National Park Service site, check the citation of the photo, make sure you give credit to the photographer, make sure you check the copyright information, use it appropriately. But this is a wonderful resource. If you can't get to a National Park Service site, you can view videos and photos online, and they're historic as well. Hey, good morning, Daphne. How are you? I hope you're doing well. We're streaming from the desk today because it's 10 degrees out. It just hit 10 degrees. It was 8 degrees. It just hit 10 degrees outside. And we're talking about what to do on a rainy day. Although it's a sunny day, I would so be out there, but it probably is not the smartest thing for my camera or my phone. Thanks for joining. Everyone, check out Daphne's channel. I'm so amazed at her creativity. She's working on Valentine's Day now. Daphne, what are you doing for St. Patrick's Day? I want to see the St. Patrick's Day stuff too. But Daphne is such a creative person. And Daphne, you need to do a live stream from your desk. I want to be able to chat with you while you're creating things. The National Park Service website also has live webcams. So if you can't get to a National Park Service site, you can be there virtually. There are many. Check it out. This happens to be a nighttime view. I guess I was capturing this video at 8:12 p.m. one day um, of Steamtown in Scranton, Pennsylvania. That's the great big roundhouse and all the historic trains. And you can watch that live. You can watch them moving trains around live. But there are hundreds and hundreds of webcams capturing sites at our national parks. I said I'm from Maryland. I concentrate on Maryland because it's where I am. I'm in Maryland. I work in Washington, D.C. I'm often in Philadelphia, as well as Northern Virginia and West Virginia. And so the National Park Service also has a huge map of National Historic Trails. This is the map of just the trails that go through Maryland. So that darkish green line that goes from north of Gettysburg all the way down the Blue Ridge Parkway, all the way down the east coast of the United States. That's the Appalachian Trail. The more neon green line that traces the Potomac River, which is the southern boundary of Maryland between Maryland, Virginia, and West Virginia, that's the C&O Canal Trail. You've seen me on that trail. I love that trail. I've hiked about half of it, but half of it up and back. So I've done mileage-wise the entire trail, but I haven't been to every mile marker yet. You can also see the kind of bluish trails through the Chesapeake Bay and branching off from the Chesapeake Bay. Those are trails related to the War of 1812, as well as the Harriet Tubman National Underground Railroad Trail. So you can follow the different routes that Harriet Tubman and her companions took while trying to bring slaves from the southern states through Maryland up into New York and other areas to freedom. So this is just one, and that the red trail that goes kind of through Baltimore and Washington, D.C., that's the Star Spangled Banner Trail. It hits some American Revolution sites as well as some War of 1812 sites. So lots of different trails to drive, to walk, to explore, all through the National Park Service. In Maryland, we have 18 national parks. Maryland's a small state, by the way. When you look at the larger states, these numbers get much bigger. 5 national trails, 3 national heritage areas, 75 national historic landmarks. So those could be buildings or monuments or places rather than entire parks. 6 national natural landmarks and 686 archaeological sites, none of which you will find. You will not find the active archaeological sites listed, and that's for a very good reason. Some of the places where I've worked, we do not advertise because treasure hunters come along. Kevin has a church designated a historic landmark for their part in the Underground Railroad. Yes, there are also some markings and some specific markers using the iconography that that those helping the slaves would carve into fences and trees certain symbols to let them know that a home was a safe home versus, hey, don't come near this home. And so there are markers on those historic landmarks that that make use of that iconography. There are 2,665,321, but I made this slide deck a year and a half ago, plus and more in the National Parks Museum collection. The museum is available online, so you can check out those objects, not all 2 million of them, but you can check those out. The website will tell you if it's not available online, it'll tell you where to find it. And in Maryland, this was for the year 2021. Okay, so we're going back 5 years. Almost 6 million visitors to Maryland national parks. Now that's just our national parks. States have state parks, local parks, all sorts of history to explore, which we can't do right now on a very cold day, but we can get prepared. We can map out our field trips for later in the year. Oh, and here's okay, I always get the mileage wrong. It's 184.5 miles. Okay. This is just one of the places on the Chesapeake and Ohio Canal. And you'll see the sign marking this is dam number 5. And you can't see the dam. It's kind of through the trees there. But I wanted to get the sign and the dam in a photo. It's kind of hard. But a wonderful, amazing place to check out history. Why is a canal trail history? Well, if you had an ancestor who worked on a farm, worked in the coal mines, those goods were transported between Washington, D.C., Maryland, up to Ohio, across the Potomac to West Virginia and Virginia during the 1800s. During the Civil War, the soldiers had to cross the Potomac River and the C&O Canal to get from north to south. So the same unit on both sides may have crossed 5, 10, 15 times. What a pain. Crossing the Potomac, there are certain places you can cross that are really easy. It's very shallow. But then you get across this really easy crossing for the Potomac River, and then you hit this canal that in some places is 20 feet deep. So you'll notice on Civil War troop movements, the troops crossing the Potomac and then having to walk along the shore of the Potomac for miles to get to an easy place to cross the canal. So crossing this river and canal is an interesting part of the Civil War story. Local preservation is also an important story. So beyond the National Park Service, there are local organizations. This is the ha Hamilton Willard Schaefer Farm in Burkittsville, Maryland. And you can see if you can see the photo on the left, although it's a beautiful day and a blue sky, that building's fallen down. The photo on the right is the in-progress preservation from about a year or two ago. And I'll have to take another picture now because this is one of the sites that I work on. They've done an amazing, amazing job of preserving this house. Why preserve this house? Because during the Civil War, during the Battle of South Mountain on September 14th of 1862, the 6th Corps, of which my ancestor was a part, was headquartered here, and General William B. Franklin had his headquarters at this home. This home is also historic, going into the late 1800s and early 1900s for a number of reasons and for the family that lived there. And so locally, hey, on July 16th, this was probably 2024. On July 16th, we had a work day, 8 a.m. till 1 o'clock. We appreciate 2 hours of your time. Bring gloves. And sometimes it says, bring a shovel, bring trash bags. It's also a great time to know neighbors. I don't live anywhere near this home. I live about an hour and 10 minutes from this location. This is not my local neighborhood, but I work on this place because the history of this area is important to me and to my family history. How many historic places are in the state of Maryland? Well, it's probably incalculable, but if you are in Maryland and interested in Maryland history, there's also the roadside historical markers. And the Maryland Department of Transportation hosts this website with the list of all of the roadside markers in Maryland. And you can click on each marker. You can read the marker if you can't get there in person, and you can learn about the location. There is also an inventory if you're a little less visual and you like a good list and a database. Maryland has an inventory of monuments and memorials. And so you can go to this website and look at all the monuments and memorials, well, as many as have been cataloged in the state of Maryland. You can learn where they are, what they commemorate, and more information. You know, sometimes you get who built it, who designed it, who architected it. For me, this is a great resource because there are some statues out there that no longer have a marker or any descriptive information. And I think some people think like, oh, this monument is to, so in Baltimore, you know, there's a war memorial, our war memorial plaza. Well, what war is it? Is it World War II? It's World War One. But to know that it was World War One, you might have to look that up. The quote monument in Baltimore, we have a Washington monument, and then we have a battle monument. Which battle is it? Well, it's the Battle of Baltimore in the War of 1812 that actually took place in 1814. So to learn about those monuments and memorials, I'm talking about Maryland now, but every state has this information. I mentioned earlier the Maryland World War II Memorial that's located in Annapolis, Maryland, across from the Naval Academy, and this is it. This is a view of the names on that memorial. And one of the names on the photo that I'm showing now is the name of one of my ancestors. He was killed. He died shortly after D-Day, so he was wounded at D-Day and died shortly thereafter. So this is a great place, and you get a great picture. So at that memorial, I got the photo of his name, but the reflection of the clouds in the sky on this, I'll call it blue granite, this really shiny, super amazing blue granite. And then this picture here, this is the Maryland Monument at the Antietam battlefield. When you go to battlefields, not only will you get to see what your ancestors saw in terms of the geography, but often there are monuments, and there are several monuments that I can relate to my ancestor. This one is interesting. It's a monument to all from Maryland who fought in the Civil War, both on the Confederate and the Union side. And inside and outside of this, beautiful monument are plaques to all of the units on both sides from Maryland. And then a little south of the location of his unit is a specific marker to the artillery battery that he was part of. So the weather's bad, but we can do our research to prepare for our next trip outside. How do we best do that? I like a good itinerary. I like a really good field trip plan. This is a simple one. This is the actual itinerary that I handed my dad 2 weeks ago when we were headed over to the Eastern Shore. He laughs at me. He puts up with me. He likes to get out and go. I like to get out and go, but I need a checklist when I go. My mom and dad both have been with me on vacations and travels, and when I hand them an itinerary, they just roll their eyes. But you need a plan. You need to make sure you can do everything you want to do. And I can I can say with certainty that in a span of about 3.5 hours, we hit every location that we wanted to hit. I think it's because we had a great itinerary. I don't have to tell you how to make an itinerary. It's pretty easy. I usually start by listing out my key objectives. What do I want to do during the time that I have in the location that I'm going to, right? And so for me, I was looking at part of Maryland's Eastern Shore, particularly Kent County, I'm sorry, Queen Anne's County and Talbot County, Maryland. Not too far from where I live, about an hour and some from where I live. And I wanted to make sure my dad had the opportunity to do some bird watching. So Ferry Point Park at dawn. Yeah, we left before 6 o'clock. So Ferry Point Park at dawn. We did some walking, hiking, birding, and photoing. And then we went on our way to Tillman Island. I was able to stop at 3 post offices and get postmarks. I go to local post offices and get a local hand stamped postmark on postcards. But on our way to St. Michael's, I realized the St. Michael's post office opens late. It opens at 9. But the Newcomb post office closes early. It closes at 10. So now my entire window is constricted between 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock in that area. So we actually went to the farthest post offices first and then worked our way back. So we went to Tillman Island first, got there at 8:30, made our way to Whitman and Bosman. And then by the time we got to St. Michael's, it was after 9 o'clock, but it was before 10. So we got to St. Michael's and we got to Newcomb on time. We also got to the Royal Oak post office. We stopped at Oak Creek Landing for some birding, so then I made my actual schedule. Did we stick to it exactly? No, a little here and there, but that's for me. And then I put my little Google map and I put little check mark at the bottom to remind me to write out my logs, my field trip notes, index and catalog my photos, and make videos. None of it ever happens on time. These itineraries then go in my little inbox on my desk, and it's a pile now that on a snowy, rainy day like today, I can go back to and try to catch up. And that's what I'll be doing today. I will also be reading. Grab a book, read on a snowy day. Talk to your living relatives, as I mentioned before. Write letters. Write those names on photos. And get ready for your next outdoor adventure. That's what I'm doing today. And film club. I still have film club. Thankfully, we won't have bad weather during film club. I know there was one not too long ago that my internet went out like twice during the live stream. Today's film is The Charge of the Light Brigade. Try again. Take two. Today's film is The Charge of the Light Brigade. In America, we don't learn about the Crimean War, so this is a good exploration. It is one of those historic military blunders. We're going to talk about that today. And we'll talk a little bit about the poem by Alfred Lord Tennyson, The Charge of the Light Brigade. A nice little venture into history for Film Club today. Everyone, I hope you have a really good weekend ahead of you. I hope you do stay warm and safe. I hope you take the opportunity to dig into your history. Use this time when you have some free time. And for me, it's keeping me from exploring. But there's a lot of history that I can explore to prepare for my next field trip and my next adventure. And I look forward to having all of you with me on that next adventure. Daphne, have a fantastic weekend. Kay Colley, I hope you have a really good weekend. Kevin, enjoy yourself. Stay warm. I hope you've got like 2 more hours left until the snow hits you. Space Nut, have a wonderful weekend. And everyone else, take care.